It's Wednesday, July 8th, 2026. It's the 189th day of the year, and this extreme pattern that we've been tracking for the better part of a week has officially locked in. I mean that literally. The ridge is parked, the jet stream is buckled around it. Now we're looking at a stretch of weather that is going to hold the entire middle of the country hostage for the foreseeable future. So let's jump right into it, because there's a lot happening today. The big story isn't just the heat anymore, it's the fact that this pattern has become so entrenched that it's starting to influence everything else going on across the country, from where the storms are firing to how bad the wildfire danger is getting out west. We're talking about heat index values pushing past 110 across a huge chunk of the southern plains today. And honestly, it's not going to get much better from here through the rest of the week. Picture this pattern like a boulder sitting in the middle of a river. Everything else, the storm systems, the cold fronts, the disturbances, they all have to bend around it because it simply refuses to move. That's exactly what's happening with this ridge of high pressure right now. It's centered basically right over the Four Corners region, and it is so strong that it's actually deflecting the jet stream way up into Canada, which means there is nothing, and I mean nothing, that's going to come along and break this thing down anytime soon. Oklahoma, Texas, Kansas, and Missouri are the ones that are really going to feel the brunt of it today, with afternoon highs pushing 105 to 110 in spots. And when you add in the humidity that's been pulled up from the Gulf, we're talking heat index values that could climb into the 112 to 118 range in some of the more humid pockets. That is a genuinely dangerous level of heat, the kind that can cause heat stroke in under 30 minutes if you're out there working or exercising without proper hydration. And here's the part that really worries me. Overnight lows in cities like Oklahoma City, Wichita, and Dallas are only going to fall into the low 80s, which means there is essentially no recovery period for your body overnight. That's the exact setup that leads to a spike in heat-related hospital visits, especially for elderly folks, for outdoor workers, and for anyone without reliable air conditioning. If you've got neighbors or family members who fall into any of those categories, now is the time to check in on them, because this isn't a one-day event, this is a multi-day siege. As we go through the rest of this week, this ridge is actually going to expand its reach even further. By Friday, I expect the triple-digit heat to push north into Nebraska and even into parts of South Dakota, with some spots flirting with all-time July records, depending on how strong this thing gets. And by the weekend, there's a real chance we start seeing some of that heat spill east into the Ohio Valley, which would put cities like St. Louis and Louisville into the mix as well. The exact eastward extent is still a little uncertain because it depends on exactly how far this ridge decides to nose eastward, but the overall signal in the models has been remarkably consistent over the last several runs, which tells me confidence is fairly high that this is going to be a prolonged and widespread heat event. Now let's talk about how long this actually sticks around, because I know that's the question everybody wants answered. Unfortunately, this isn't a quick 2 or 3 day spike. The extended models are keeping this ridge locked in place through at least the middle of next week. And honestly, there are some signs it could hold on even longer than that. The only real hope for a break comes from a weakness that's trying to dig in across the Pacific Northwest and Northern Rockies, but even that isn't strong enough right now to seriously challenge the ridge. It's more likely to just nibble at the edges and maybe bring a few cooler days to Montana and the Dakotas, rather than actually breaking the pattern down completely. Let's shift over to the severe weather side of things, because even with all this heat locked in down south, we've still got an active severe weather threat riding along the northern edge of that ridge today. There's a level 2 out of 5 slight risk in effect from central Montana, through North Dakota and into far western Minnesota. This is going to be driven by a weak disturbance that's riding along the top of the ridge, and it's going to interact with Al, that incredibly hot, unstable air that's been building up underneath it. When you get a setup like that, storms can go from nothing to severe in a hurry, and I'm watching for the potential of large hail, some of it up to golf ball size, along with damaging wind gusts up to 70 miles per hour in the strongest cells later this afternoon and evening. There's also a low-end tornado threat, mainly across central and eastern North Dakota, where we could see enough low-level shear develop right around sunset for a spin-up tornado or two. Before we keep going, I do want to take a second to thank today's sponsor. This video is brought to you by Current. Look, dealing with your money shouldn't feel as unpredictable as trying to forecast a supercell 3 days out, but if you're still stuck with a traditional bank, you're probably dealing with hidden fees and waiting around for your own paycheck to actually hit your account. That's why I'm excited to talk about Current again. One of my favorite features is their paycheck advance, which lets you get paid up to 2 days early once you set up direct deposit. So you're not sitting there stressing out over the weekend waiting on your money to clear. They've also got a built-in credit building feature that helps you build your credit history automatically just from your everyday spending, no extra effort required. And right now they're offering a great deal for you guys. If you sign up at current.com or Ryan Hall and use my promo code Ryan Hall, you can get $50 just for unlocking tools like the paycheck advance and credit building features. Again, that's current.com Ryan Hall with promo code Ryan Hall for your $50. Terms and conditions apply. Big thanks to Current for sponsoring today's forecast. Now let's get back into it. Sliding back over toward the Mississippi Valley and the Mid-South, we've got a marginal risk of severe weather today, mainly for damaging winds. But the bigger concern in this zone is actually flash flooding. A stalled boundary is going to sit right along the Tennessee and Arkansas border, and with training thunderstorms expected to repeatedly fire along that same line through the afternoon and evening, we could see localized rainfall, totals of 3 to 4 inches in a fairly short window. The ground in this area is already fairly saturated from recent rounds of rain, so it's not going to take much for creeks and low-lying roads to start overflowing. If you live anywhere near Memphis, Jonesboro, or up toward Paducah, just keep an eye on the radar tonight, and remember, never drive through a flooded roadway. Turn around, don't drown. Now let's head out west, because the heat and the drought out there are combining to create a legitimately dangerous wildfire setup today. Across the Great Basin and into the interior Pacific Northwest, we've got critical fire weather conditions developing thanks to a combination of very low relative humidity, values dropping into the single digits and low teens in some spots, along with sustained winds of 25 to 35 miles per hour. On top of that, we've got a chance of dry lightning across parts of northern Nevada and southeastern Oregon this afternoon, where thunderstorms are going to fire up. But most equipment that could throw a spark, skip the campfires, and make sure you've got an evacuation plan ready to go, just in case something ignites quickly and starts spreading. Wake somebody up in the middle of the night. That's exactly why we built Y'all Call. If a warning drops for your specific location overnight, your phone is going to ring, and it's going to keep ringing until you actually pick it. That are dealing with genuinely gorgeous conditions. Up across the interior Northeast, places like upstate New York and northern Pennsylvania are sitting comfortably in the upper 70s and low 80s today, with dew points down in the crisp 50s, which means it's going to feel dry, comfortable, and honestly about as close to perfect summer weather as you can ask for. Same story across much of the upper Great Lakes, where Traverse City and areas around there are looking at sunny skies, light winds, and low humidity. So if you've got outdoor plans up in that neck of the woods today, you really could not have asked for better timing. The severe weather threat is likely going to keep riding along that northern boundary, shifting a little bit east or west from day to day, depending on exactly where the small disturbances track. I'll be watching closely for any signs of a pattern change as we get into the back half of next week. But for right now, my confidence is high that this locked-in extreme pattern is going to be the dominant story across the country for at least the next 7 to 10 days. If you're in any of the heat-impacted areas, please take this seriously. Stay hydrated, limit outdoor activity during peak afternoon hours, never leave kids or pets in a parked car even for a few minutes, and check in on anyone you know who might be vulnerable to the heat. And if you're under any of these severe weather risk areas tonight, make sure you've got a reliable way to get warnings. Because with storms capable of producing large hail, damaging winds, and a few tornadoes, you don't want to be caught off guard. That's all the weather talk I've got for you today. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you slap a like on this video if you found it helpful. Subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss any of our daily updates through this pattern, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.